All right, welcome everybody. I'm here with a special guest of Christa. Now, I'm here with a special guest of Christa. Now, Christa did a 12-week one-to-one online coaching program with me, and she's finished up about a month and a half ago. You finished up?
Yeah, it was like end of July.
Yeah. So we're approaching the end of August right now if you're watching this later. Of course, if you're here, let us know that you're following along here. Say hi to Christa and I. So Christa's just going to talk a little bit about her journey, and I'm really excited that she's going to, because I think like it's going to kind of like you're just going to feel your story inside your story. You know what I mean? Because I think that oftentimes, and I'm sure you felt like this before, like you feel alone, you feel crazy in your own thoughts, and you're like, why can't I get my shit together? And I think other women feel like that too. And so when we share these stories, it's like we have more in common than we think. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. So let's start off with, who are you? Let's start there.
So I am a mom that works from home due to COVID now. So I totally changed routines when COVID started and started working from home. I work for a national company, love my job. It's finance based. Couldn't have a better job. I am a mom to two teenagers who push my buttons daily and like to push the envelope of where we're going to next, who are also very independent and getting to the end of their teenage years. As well, I am engaged and getting married come January in Costa Rica, and huge destination wedding. That's me.
And so I think that we'll start off by just like transitioning into like why you were looking for coaching. And then I want to circle back because you said, hey, my kids are like at that age where they're the end of, their teenage years and they're more independent. And that proposed a little bit of like a gap between like, who am I now that they need me less? So let's circle back to that one. And let's start off with, why did you need coaching?
So I feel like I'm a person that struggled with my weight most of my life. Like I don't remember a time where weight was not a focus of mine. I did lots of diets and lots of quick fixes. And of course, they all end up failing. I stayed on track for so long and then completely fell off track and went back to my original habits, as well as gained back that weight, and typically gained back more weight than I had previously. So I was just looking for something that wasn't a diet. I was looking for something that was a life-changing program that I knew that it was something I could maintain on good days, on bad days, and going forward throughout the rest of my life without depriving myself of everything.
Yeah. Again, I think we're going to circle back to that one too, because there's a lot to unpack there as well. But you were also, again, in a time where your kids weren't needing you as much, and you're trying to figure out, who am I and what do I want out of, like, you have this great career, you're looking forward to getting married and starting that adventure. But it's like, who am I now that they don't need me as much? So how did that play in? Because you might see them as separate, but there are components of that were related to wanting to dive into coaching or trying to figure out this, how do I eat? How do I live in my body? How do I move into self-acceptance?
It was kind of like a big reality in the spring that I was no longer the mom that had to be with them every day or plan everything for them, and especially run them to all of their sports and any activities. So my son finished hockey and I was like, that's the end. That's the end of like our sports and me providing that. So it was actually a huge emotional change at that moment. And I didn't expect that emotional change. I didn't expect that. And that actually hit me way harder than ever planned. So yeah, I went back to, you know what, who am I? I haven't been me in 15, 16 plus years without them. So who am I, and how do I want to change back to me and back to focusing on myself and not just focusing on being a mom anymore.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess women, if you're watching this, you can give us a heart or a thumbs up, because I think that you're going to relate to that too, right? Is like, you know, a lot of women that I coach are like, you know, everything goes here, this energy goes here, this time goes here. And then when that shifts, it's like we've spent so much time here that we don't know who we are here. And then you jumped into coaching kind of at the same time that those two things were merging, because one, you saw a time opportunity, but two, you saw it as an opportunity to kind of connect back to yourself, to figure this piece out.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, okay. So your experience has been dieting. And one of the things that we worked on together was around carbs, because when you've always dieted, you've always omitted carbs or reduced carbs or the kinds of carbs. But what was happening was every time something emotional happened or something happened, or it was around you, like your teenage kids were eating it, your husband was eating it, you couldn't be around it. You only knew how to avoid it. You didn't know how to be around it. So can you just talk about your experience with, avoiding it, and then how we kind of work together to include it?
So avoiding it was brutal. Avoiding things. And like carbs, like my favorite carbs are pasta and bread. Like I want those good, wholesome carbs. So every diet that I had ever been on was cut those out, get rid of those. We don't eat those. Those are bad for you. And we went from, every time I was on a diet, we went from a family that had bread and had pasta on a regular basis to, oh, mom can't eat it, so now nobody's eating it. Or if you guys eat it, don't you dare eat it around me, because I will attack you just to have that food, because I'm not allowed it. And it just always bothered me that I was like, those are foods that I love. Those are foods I can't have. So something would happen in my life, and that's what I would go for. That's what I would resort back to. And then once I fell off that diet wagon and started eating those again, I was just done. I wasn't trying to go back on that diet, or if I did, it wouldn't last as long as the first round, and then it would just be a vicious cycle. That was one of the things I think you and I worked through fairly early.
Because what you haven't shared is that you like to make your own pasta.
Oh yeah, yes. So, and that's it. Like we're a house that cooks the majority of our food. We don't eat very many processed foods, and if I can make it, we make it. So bread, half the time is homemade. Pasta, 90% of the time is homemade pasta. So that's also an activity that everybody gets involved with. So cutting that out was also cutting out that family quality time. It wasn't just cutting out the food, it was cutting out a whole piece of us. So we did tackle that, and I go back and I regularly make pasta again, and make bread. And the strategies that I've learned of how to eat those and how to be successful in eating those have just really helped. The amount of veggies I hide in all of our pasta sauces, like that is not a family activity anymore, because I need to hide all those veggies so they don't see how much is going in that sauce.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that because we tried a little experiment because you had brought up, because we were just talking about, what's something that you're craving or thinking about that you're not allowing yourself to have. And you said pasta. And then you told me, hey, I make my own pasta and this is what it looks like or whatever. And so I was like, well, let's have pasta. So let's figure out. So we created what I call the safety parameter. So we created like a
Yeah.
safe experiment for you to try it. And the goal was we had to keep a couple of habits in place. One, we had to eat it slowly. Two, we had to eat it mindfully. And three, you were going to report back at the very end. How did that feel? What were the thoughts? Did you have old thoughts come up? Did you feel like you ruined it? Did you overeat or whatever? And so we did that checkpoint and you were like, I didn't. None of that stuff happened. None of that stuff usually happened, or the story I was telling myself didn't happen. And so then we were like, great, when do you want to do it again? And let's expand the safety parameters a little bit more, right? Until eventually got to a place where it was like, it was part of just what you ate and what you did. It wasn't like a special food or a food to avoid. Do I got that right?
Totally have that right. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we just totally changed what happens in that whole evening when we're making pasta. And like, I always make a big salad with it. Not everybody in my house eats the big salad, but I always have a huge bowl of salad, and I do that before I even serve myself pasta.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, because we also
Yeah.
worked on like increasing your vegetables and increasing your protein in that way too.
yeah.
Now, in previous diets, when you had kind of an emotion or a thought, like you had something happen while we were coaching together. I remember two incidences actually, but where you engage in emotional eating. So previous diets would have been like, you would have been like, oh, I might as well maximize this, do more of it. It would have taken you longer to get back in. But this time it happened. It happened while we were coaching together. So what was it like? One, it felt different and you experienced it different. And two, what was it like to have coaching support around that?
So the big thing was when anything happened that did cause like a heightened emotional activity, is I didn't run to the kitchen. I didn't run, and I didn't overindulge and sit on the couch and eat the big bag of potato chips and then feel like crap afterwards. I definitely, the first couple of times, indulged in something that is not as healthy and not like my daily activities now. Like, I would have had a couple of Oreo cookies or something, but I didn't eat the tray of Oreo cookies. And I remember the first couple of times doing that and thinking, this food's gross. Like, the amount of taste bud change that I had over the first few weeks of us training before one of those incidents happened totally made the taste different, which I still have that same taste model. Like, how many weeks later, I'm still in that. So I think it's been a change of taste for good. It wasn't just, oh, you got through those like first 10 days that are yucky and not fun, and then go back to it, but it wasn't. And I changed my habit of running to the kitchen when something emotional happened, and to finding something that I could do that took out more energy from me and more emotional kind of structure that was happening in a different way. So my thing was walking. Get out of the house, get away and walk. And when I did those walks at those times, I wasn't focusing on how long I was walking, what my heart rate was. It was just get out of the like house, out of that fog, and clear my brain. And still, that's exactly what I do. And it works well.
Yeah, and it works well because it's about creating that space, right? You have that thought or that feeling and you're used to be an automatic reaction, right? And now the walk creates the space there before you react, right? And it's not to say that sometimes we just still don't grab, but like you said, it's like, I'm not eating the whole tray. I might have an Oreo or whatever, but it's less, the turnaround time's quicker, and you're doing something more helpful to help you process the feelings and thoughts.
And I'm not getting into that food coma afterwards, where I've just overindulged in so much food. Now all I want to do is lay down and sleep, or I'm hanging out on the couch and I'm grumpy because of the emotionals, right? Like all of that mindset is gone.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And then tell me what, like, because your kids and your husband have been, or your fiance have been part of your weight loss journey for a while now. So, and here you are, you're telling them, hey, I'm doing this thing again. And I've got eye rolls, but this time it was different. So what did they notice about you?
I think the first thing that they noticed that didn't change this time was my attitude. Because at every other time, my attitude would change, and not for the best. It would be very negative and just like quick to anger, versus this time I was still my regular, relaxed, like calm, humorous self. And they did notice that quite a bit. And they also noticed that the food in the house didn't change.
Yeah.
I didn't take things away that they love and are used to just because I can't have them.
Yeah. And that for you now allows you to be around those foods,
Yeah.
right? And how, and that's an important thing, I think, for women listening to this, is like a lot of diets teach you how to avoid those things. But then when you are around them, like at, a buffet, or, a social event or a barbecue or whatever, you don't know how to be with them. And so you're attracted more to them because you've been avoiding them for so long. So for you, having them in the house, that was completely new for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember the tactics that we talked about and really divulged into prior to us going to a friend's house. And I knew it would be like just trays of food everywhere, and foods that I don't want to indulge in all the time anymore. I remember the discussion before and then the discussion afterwards of saying, you know what? It was hard, but it was doable. And every time since then, it gets a little bit easier. And my tactic in a lot of those situations have been where I place myself in the room. So I don't place myself directly in front of the food that I only want to have a small amount of. I place myself in a different part of the room so I'm not overindulging. And then I get into more conversations with people and more activities, and I'm not missing out and don't feel like I'm missing out because I'm not eating that food.
Yeah, because we had discussions about like, what's your intention? Like, what do you want to feel or get out of going into that thing? And what do you want to feel coming out of that, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing is, we really worked on boundaries, preserving your boundaries based on your own values, so that other people don't then impose their own values onto you in that way. Because if you don't preserve that, then you're kind of living someone else's life. And every time you've gone into a social situation, it's like, oh, I'll just have one. Sure, I'll take that, right? And now we're kind of like, well, what do I want to feel? What's my intention behind here? And what we discovered was like, you just want to be around people. You just want to have really good conversation, that it very much had little to do with the food, but it had very much to do with the people you were surrounding yourself with.
And that has been extremely relevant in my life since COVID started and I transitioned to work from home. So I don't see people as much. I don't get out as much. So when we do have those opportunities and we're with friends, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I want the interaction with them. I don't want the food. I want to be involved with them.
Yeah, I love that. So then let's transition into talking about movement. And so the one thing that we worked on was, okay, so you finish your day at home, and then what your pattern was kind of like, I lay on the couch, maybe I scroll through Facebook or what have you, and then I'm demotivated to kind of move my body or work out. And so what we did was we looked at kind of what we call a buffer time. What would you like to do? So Christa's not the type of person who can finish work, go right into a workout, which is, we identified that was the time where you wanted to do movement because nobody was home yet, right?
Yeah.
You had a lull of time there. So we identified that, but you couldn't go from one into the next. You needed time in between to shift from one mindset into another mindset. So
Yeah.
what did we work on, or what's been serving you well in that space there?
So I know we tried quite a few things before we really landed on what worked for me. And my job is quite mental heavy. So when I leave work, my brain is usually done. It's full. It's had a full day. It needs a break. And yeah, I tried to go right from the desk to doing a workout, and uh, it just wasn't successful for me. So one of the things that we tried that worked well for me is just having like 15 minutes of quiet time away from something, and making sure that that time wasn't on the couch and wasn't laying down, because as soon as I did that, the motivation's gone and I'm not getting back up.
Mhm.
So a lot of the time, my 15 minutes that I do and find is outside. If the weather's nice, that 15 minutes is outside, and it's just sitting on the deck. Like, it can be with anybody that's home. It can be by myself. It can be with the dogs. It's just clearing my mindset. It's quiet. I'm not focusing on what I need to get done next. It's just kind of in my own thoughts, just sitting quietly. It's
Yeah.
the best part of the day.
Yeah, and I love that. And I love that because it's a really great transition from one part into the next part too, right?
Yeah.
And so you lost you lost weight coaching together. And the reason why I'm saying that is because a lot of women will just bank on exercise to be the thing that's going to get them there. Now you have a chronic back injury, and that
Yeah.
prevents you from doing a lot of a lot of different types of exercise. All we worked on was walking, and you
Yeah.
still lost weight. So can you talk about, so I'm imagining when you did other diets, it was about pushing your body a little bit harder, a little bit to the max. And here we are switching gears to focus on the nutrition pieces. And then that one was actually the smallest piece, the smallest needle.
It was. Yeah. The nutrition piece was my biggest focus and my biggest change, because if I push myself too much physically, all that does is get me into a lot of pain, where then I'm laid up for the next day or two and not able to get back into that routine. So yeah, I was very nervous and very hesitant of what that would look like. So walking is something that most of the time I have no pain with. I can walk and walk and walk and no pain with. So that's what we started with. We just started with walking, and the focus at the beginning wasn't how long, wasn't how fast, it was just moving. And then we slowly got up to moving for an hour every time. And then we moved to really watch my heart rate and getting it up so many times, like every 60 minutes that I'm walking. And now when my fiance does come for a walk with me, he's like, "Can you slow down? Like, like why are we going so fast?" Because it went from just like those slow, casual walk to now I really look at my heart rate and focus on it, because I know what that's doing. So when we go for a casual walk, I'm like, this isn't what I wanted. Come on, let's go.
But on the flip side, it changed your evening routine too, because that wasn't something you guys did on the regular, is walking together. And now you're bonding more over that.
Yes. And my dogs absolutely love it, obviously. And one of the funny things that happened while we were training is that I had taken our dog to the vet, and they said, "She's gaining too much weight. She needs to get moving." And I was like, "Oh, I think I can make that happen."
Yeah, the double win.
It was clearly a double win. Yeah. So the dog is also losing weight, which is just fantastic.
Yeah. And so again, like we said in the very beginning, like you stopped coaching for a while now, and your goal was, through the summer, was, my goal is to maintain my weight loss, not gain any more weight. And then now in the fall, you're looking at kind of ramping it up as you bought a new dress, you're getting ready for the wedding. So maintenance. Okay. So a lot of women have a lot of experience losing weight, but they don't have the skill set or the experience maintaining the weight loss. And that was a new space for you. And you've maintained the weight loss now for a month and a half. That was your goal. So just talk about the maintenance.
So the whole time that we coached, like I would say after that first month, we would talk and go into things. And I'm like, okay, why does this just seem so natural? Why does eating this way seem so natural? Like, I'm like, it's supposed to be more difficult. This can't be it. It's supposed to be more difficult. And then as we finished up my 12 weeks, it was still very natural for me. It was daily habits that I created when I worked with you and maintained, and they're not even a daily thought now. It's just a daily habit that continues. So to transition from our 12 weeks of coaching into maintaining for a month and a half was actually something that was so easy that I'm like, life can't be this easy. Things can't be this easy. But we had trained so well that now I know what habits and what things I should be doing every day. And it becomes my natural choice and my natural process that to maintain my weight loss just was easy over the summer, because I was like, okay, I know that our activity tonight, like we're going out with friends. So I really focus on what my nutritional habits are for breakfast and lunch. And if I have a snack that afternoon, I really focus on a lot of the veggies and the high protein, knowing that if we're going out for supper, chances are my meal at supper is going to have more of the fat or some type of deep fried food, something that isn't a daily habit for me. And the first few times, like it was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. Like I got this. And now I'm like, oh, this like, oh yeah, we're going out tonight. Okay, this is what I'm doing for the day. So I also make sure that those days are the days that I have a really good 60-minute movement. Like I'm out there, I'm walking, or I've slowly started to get into running, which I'm just cautious with my back. So yeah. I just make sure that those days I'm really doing a lot of movement. And then the next day I will not step on the scale. I will not look at the scale the next day. I wait, and I will look at it usually the day after that. And I'm always pleasantly surprised that that number is like within like 2 or 3 pound of where I've been sitting.
Yeah, because that's a self-sabotaging pattern for women, is like they will do it and then they'll jump on the scale as a way to verify that they already went over, but they already know, right? And so for women who like overeat or eat out of the regular or whatever, or eat foods that they feel like they should avoid and then jump on the scale, it's a form of self-sabotage. So we always work on, okay, let's see what your body does, and do it like 2 to 3 days, and then what your parameter is, because it's not about just meeting portions every day for the rest of your life. It's that you have flexibility after to go over and under. The scale, just jumping on it 2 to 3 days later, helps us with that fear voice, that voice that's like, oh, I'm sliding, I'm going backwards or whatever. It's kind of a check until you can move into being more intuitive with yourself, where you just know. Yeah. Does that? Yeah. I know. And then that might seem like really big or whatever, like, why is she talking about? But first up, when you're in it and you're coaching, it's just like it's incrementally you work your way up there. And so it starts to make sense. Whereas if you're trying to get there right now, it's like, that's too big of a jump. It's too obscure.
Oh yeah. It would have been way too big of a jump for me to get there.
Yeah.
The amount of emotional kind of mindset stuff that we coached and talked about, I was like, that's not what I'm signing up for. I'm signing up for like diets, and I'm signing up for learning how to move. And I was like, this was so much more than just talking about a diet. This is talking about the lifestyle change and what my body needs every day, not just for 12 weeks.
Yeah. I love that. And so do you feel like you have the tools and the skills now? Because you're saying, okay, I'm coming out of maintenance and I'm going into weight loss mode. Do you feel like you have now the tools and the skills to navigate both?
I feel very equipped and knowledgeable on what I need to do to get back into the weight loss mode. Clearly in the summer in my house, there's a lot more alcohol than there is in any other month. So that that is my biggest change that I know that I'm ready for, to be like, okay, I don't need this weekend of alcohol every weekend anymore. Like, we're not big drinkers, but it hits in the summer for some time, for some reason. So that's actually my first thing that I'm going to be focusing on when I go back to the weight loss versus maintaining is, okay, just back to the regular drinks of water every day versus alcohol every evening or afternoon, especially on the weekends. So the other tools, like the nutritional tools, I think there's not much that I will change back from what I've been doing for maintaining, except again, we won't be eating out as much as the summer kind of slows off and we get into the fall and the kids get back to school, those routines. And then the movement, like you and I did a lot of tactics together of just kind of daily movement versus when I ramped it up. So to get back into that, I'm really excited actually.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you have the tools and the skills to navigate both places now, because yeah, that's something that's kind of been missing. But you did mention mindset, and you were like, you weren't expecting that piece. And mindset is like a word that's kind of like, it's kind of obscure, right? It's kind of like health. It's like, what does that mean, right? And so what did it mean for you? What did mindset mean for you?
So let's go back and refresh that. When I started this coaching was also when I was high emotional mindset because of the children no longer needing me. And I didn't recognize that that was my issue really until we started coaching. And then as you're asking questions, which you're great at probing and asking and asking and asking, and then kind of things come to light, I was like, oh, well, I didn't even realize that my daily thoughts and emotions were really what was driving the rest of my body. And now that we talk through a lot of like little like situations that I had, I've really realized that the mindset that I'm in on a daily basis gives me enough power that when something emotional comes up, I can handle it and it doesn't really push me over the edge. So I have a job that changes very frequently depending on government municipality discussions. And we had a big one drop when you and I were coaching. And usually I would have just been miserable and pissed off and emotional eating, but how we coach through that mindset, and even my manager and the other people on this project are like, why is this not bothering you? Why are you okay with this? And I'm like, well, we can't change it. Like, let's just work through it. And we actually work through it way faster than we probably have worked through any other project. And it's successful and we're well on the way. And I think that has a lot to do with my mindset through that.
I love that, because it's showing you that, you know, you start off as a journey about being about weight loss. And then when you connect the dots to the mindset pieces, the emotional pieces, then you can see how it then affects other areas of your life. And then it becomes beyond weight loss.
Yes.
Like for you, it changed your outlook on pain management, right? It looked at, you know, your relationship with your fiance. You know, you still kept family traditions like making the pasta and stuff like that, and interacting with your kids. Your job, you know, the way you kind of, your perspective on your job changed. Like it had like this snowball effect.
It did. And it was not an area that I thought was an issue.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I'm like, I'm good. Like, I have a good head on my shoulders. I'm good. We don't need to talk about this. And then I was like, oh, look at all these little light bulbs that are going off.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up, like, what would you say was like your biggest takeaway or your biggest aha?
I think I said to you this over and over again is, how can this be this natural? How can this be this easy? And then I did say to you, like, I kicked myself in the butt for all those little diets that I did along the way. And you really said back to me, but if you didn't do those, this one wouldn't feel so natural and we wouldn't be where we're at today, which I really thought about afterwards. And that's very true. So for the program that I went through with you, the one-on-one coaching, all of the little things that we tackled and all of the tools that you gave me, I'm like, this is a natural thing. This is how my body should operate. And this is how my mind should be. And I don't have to be in such a thought thinking mode of every time that I'm going to eat. I know what I should eat. I know what my body likes. And I'm not meaning I know what I should eat because it falls under this chart and it's this healthy. I just know now what my body does well with and how I feel after I eat that, and the tools of when I'm eating. And those are the things that really changed. And I was like, okay, that was an easy change. And why was it so easy? Because I think my body was really ready for it. I was really ready for this good plan for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and you were at that point where it was like, I'm going to be intentional about this, right? And I think that a lot of women, like, because I get up against where it's like, I can't commit to something right now because I just don't have the time, because your experience has been all or nothing. Your experience has been, it has to be this hard thing. And you're not the first to be like, how can it feel so this easy? Because you're just so used to pedaling so hard, right? And then when it feels like that, it always feels like, well, this isn't going to work because it has to be pedaling hard, not this. But we always came back to, when we had to break something down into its smallest parts, it was always like, what would this look like if it were simple? We always came back to the simple step that we needed to take. And then we practiced. If that didn't work, we changed it. And if it did work, we stuck with it until it no longer worked, or we continued it, right? And so I think that that's really great that you shared that, because I think a lot of women are used to pedaling so hard. That's why it feels so time consuming. And you had experienced that too. And so simple doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like before, when I was really just having on the diets, being like, I can only eat this, I can only eat this much, I have to eat at this time. Like, I remember diets where I had alarms set on my phone because I had to eat at that time and I had to eat this amount of servings of this food. And I was like, okay, this is not what life is. Like, this isn't how life can be. So the tactics and the things that I learned with you, I was like, yes, that's how life should be. Like, that's how every daily routine should be. And the focus, because obviously with my back issues, my focus couldn't be fully on movement and pushing myself to do movement that would then get me in pain. So to know that this program that you have and what you're doing is, yes, it's a one size fits all on the big outside that people see. But then once you get in and you start talking and you're going through what each person needs, it is so personalized to fit that person's lifestyle and that person's body and what they need, that it just really helps on so many different levels.
Yeah, I love it. And so on that last note then, is what advice would you give to a woman who feels like they've tried everything and nothing works, or feels like it's just too time consuming and I just don't have the space for that?
I would say surprise yourself, sign up and do it. And you will be surprised very fast of how much clarity happens, not just with the coaching, but in your own mind, that okay, you thought that you didn't have enough time, but what this has done is actually giving you more time and more clarity and just kind of a natural process that you're like, okay, now I know what I should be doing and why was I waiting, and don't struggle anymore. Like, don't wait, just jump in, because that's what I did. I was like, no, I shouldn't do it yet. No, I shouldn't do it. Because you know what? We signed up and did the 10-day, like that first little bit right before my birthday. Mm-hmm. I remember that now, that I was like, oh, I should just wait for my birthday. I should just wait. And we didn't. We signed up and did it before my birthday and it worked. And I'm so glad that we didn't wait any longer. Like, I'm so glad that I just did it. So do it. You will be so surprised and so happy with the natural lifestyle changes that happen.
There you have it. I didn't even have to pay her to say that. Well, Christa, I want to thank you for sharing your story. And if any part resonated with you, then just head to the comments and just say, like, what part stuck out with you? What part are you hoping or wishing for yourself as well? And just let us know, because I think that it's always great when I don't want to toot my own horn, but it's like, if I share my story, it feels like I'm a different kind of person because I have this coaching hat, and some reason I wear a superhero cape. I'm not an ordinary person. But when an ordinary everyday person, shares their story, we can relate to it even more, because we see a bit of ourselves reflected back in that. And then we see the opportunity or the potential to get to where we want to be in a different way, because we're hearing it straight from an ordinary person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Christa, thanks so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you. It's been great. Been great.
Bye, Christa.